I thought that was never going to end, Adrian. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Sunday edition of Spurs Diehards TTID, Tottenham Till I Die. As I guess the dust starts to settle on the dismissal of Ange Postecoglou and the appointment of Thomas Frank from Brentford. We have a really interesting panel tonight. Young Tom will be joining us later. My pal Jem Silverstone around 10 o'clock UK time. But in the meantime, we have Coach Dave, who hasn't been on for a while, who we're going to get a take on his professional ideas of what's happened. Good evening, Dave.
Evening all. Good to be on. Yeah, good to be back. It's been a while. I think the last time I was on, we were in the trenches, man. We were some deep dark times. But we made it through, and as the banner says, European champions, and that never goes away. We'll wear that on our hearts for forever. Do you know what I mean? So that's good.
And of course, good evening to Adrian, the permanent fixture. One day I'll lock him in a cupboard, and I can do a show without him.
Yeah, they can wheel me out of Christmas
watching my shoulder, and with absolutely immaculate timing, abracadabra, young Tom Clark appears. Good evening, Tom.
Hello. Apologies.
Let's just say a couple of things to people in the chat. First of all, nothing happens on this show at all without a time check from Peter. So good morning to you, Peter. It's 9:08 now in London, and it's 22:08 here on the Costa Blanca. Graham, as ever, good evening, Graham. That's it. There's a number of you there, but not put messages up yet. Need to tell you something really, really important. We've been nominated in two categories of the awards for streamers, channels, podcast channels, whatever you want to call us. First of all, I think it was the best post-match analysis, which we do, but also the one I'm actually really excites me is the best newcomer, because we think we've done okay. Please, if you haven't, get a note of that link, or get it from one of us, myself or Drew or Tom or Adrian, and vote for us. And you can vote as many times as you want. So I think it was the one of the American representatives said, vote early, vote often. So that's that's what we ask you to do. But Dave, let's bring you in. You haven't been for a while. I think you were a little bit skeptical about Ange's coaching ability. And if I've done you a disservice, you can let me know. But were you surprised when he was dismissed?
You know what, I actually was. I don't think it was necessarily skeptical. It was just disappointing how things flamed out. You know, I think of us, there's been this whole conversation. I think the football conversation's got quite binary. You know, trophies or league, emotion or just stats or money or whatever. But it's all of the above, isn't it? You know, you want to tick as many of those boxes as you can, and I think just for me, you know, and I've spoken about this on different streams, and you know, I did a end of season kind of review recently, and my thing was, you know, the 6-3 Liverpool game, just seeing just the way things were set up, some of the same mistakes that we've been making for 18 months, was still kind of being made. Whoever was on the pitch, there didn't seem to be an appearance of a desire to change and adapt in any way, even small tweaks. Or if we did see those small tweaks, Man City 4-0, we saw some tweaks in that game. We saw a few tweaks in the first season. He didn't stick with it. And I think that's what kind of just made me think, oh, where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? But that said, all along, my friends and the group chats, where we can attest to this, I was at all the home Europa games, and I just had this feeling that we'd be able to do something in that competition, from quite early on. The standard of the competition, the teams that we were facing, we went, obviously, I thought actually Carabao was more likely, especially after we took the 1-0 lead at home against Liverpool. I thought maybe we might be able to sneak something at Anfield. Obviously, that didn't work out in our favour. But I think, like I said, it's just seeing the way, he seemed to have a little bit of a refusal to really adjust, especially in the league games. And as we now know, from February onwards, the league was kind of definitely a lower down the priority list for him and maybe some of the players, which is not nice to necessarily hear. Is that down to the fact he doesn't have a squad? We've never put together a squad capable of doing that, and I know we'll get onto that later when we talk about transfers. So, but all that said, I didn't think Spurs would get rid of him. I actually thought the longer it went on, I thought they would actually keep him and maybe give him a go and see how he starts next season. But the statement from the board was pretty telling, but they now need to back up their own statement, and make sure that they do what they do in the summer. Because if you're talking about you wanting to compete on all fronts or whatever, that takes more than 11 talented players. That's 16, that's 18, which means you need to invest. You can't be buying Clinton and Jay anymore, that type of player.
Yeah. Dave, let me ask you something else. I mean, a lot of comments about the praise that the players have put in for him. And I've seen tweets or messages of support from players before where, look, thanks for everything, Gaffer, good luck. But these ones seem to be much more effusive in their praise, that the players seem to me to be genuinely shocked and genuinely disappointed. And yet, as you say, they couldn't have been happy going to places like Liverpool and getting beats, or go home to 6-3, or getting gubbed in the way at Liverpool, or even losing at home to Southampton and Ipswich, where we were exposed really badly. And yet the contradiction is the players seem to, much more than I've seen with previous dismissals, and God, there's been enough of them, much more effusive in their praise for Ange than they have been for other managers.
Yeah, and I think part of that, I think and I think Romero's one was telling, not just the timing, everyone wants to talk about how he timed it, but I think a lot of these players are now looking at the situation. They've been here, some of them. You think about Porro, Romero, obviously Son, and then maybe some others who've been in the club from 2 or 3 managers, and they're going, the problem's a bit higher up. You know, they look at their age mates, they look at their competitors, and they're saying, actually, we know what it takes to, you know, think about Romero, a serial winner in terms of he's been in what, 5 finals now, and won all 5. It's about more than 11 players. It's about 16. It's about 17. When we do get injured, when we need backing in January, and you're taking 2 weeks to haggle over, you know, £5 million, or when we're in, you know, behind the scenes conversations for Eze or whatever may have happened last summer around the whole Eze situation, and then we don't go out and get the player that we need to take us to the next level. Why are we getting slapped about by a Palace or a Bournemouth, or, you know, I'm throwing out, you know, different scenarios, not saying that these things happen, but they're looking at it and they're going, actually, should our anger be at Ange? We may have felt maybe let down in some ways, but he had this gravity about him, and you see it from all his speeches, you see it from all the behind the scenes that comes out. He had a gravity about him that he was able to do kind of like a, you know, us versus them. And I think they all looked at it and went, you know what, I'm all right with this guy, but let's look higher up. And I think they're looking at it and going, guys, the problem in this club is bigger, and we'll save our protest and we'll save our anger for that situation.
Okay.
This summer is very crucial. This summer is very crucial, because if Levy doesn't do it, I think a lot of these big players are going to have a lot to say.
I think that's fair comment. I will bring you back in when we talk about the successor. Tom, we've already discussed this, so we don't really need to go on for ages. But I wonder now, sort of 9 days after, if you've got any further thoughts on Ange, or is it now, let's move on, time to move, forget Ange and move on with Frank?
I think it has to be like, thank you, Ange. Great night. But you got to move forward now. You can't be sitting here. I feel that he had, not based on necessarily team performances, but based on results in terms of winning a trophy, had earned the right to at least give next season a shot. Everyone, irrespective of who the manager is or was, everyone agreed that the squad wasn't good enough and needed improving. So my theory was, if he got those players in to be able to improve that squad, then you would definitely see an improvement in the performances in the league. You know, better players, you would, or at least you would hope so. Which is why I feel like he deserved an opportunity to at least like show what he could do with a better squad, better team. And but at the same time, I completely understand the reason for why he was sacked, and I completely understand the reason for getting Thomas Frank in. Because I genuinely think that Thomas Frank could be one of the next. Don't get me wrong, he's not the youngest guy in the world, but I reckon he could be one of the next big managers, big like sleeping giants. Like, you know, how many Spurs fans turn their nose up at Eddie Howe, but how many of them would take him now that he's had the success he's had at Newcastle? Before he went there, lots of Spurs were turning their nose up at him when we were linked with him. So we don't want to be constantly going after like being behind the curve. So I think actually we're taking a very, very good calculated risk on bringing Thomas Frank in. He's, you know, background in coaching youth players and improving youth players is definitely obviously of the ilk that Spurs kind of want, is a manager who can come in and coach and make players better. And what I like about Thomas Frank as well is that it's not just like one way of playing. He has multiple ways of playing whilst keeping like the same sort of ethos and philosophy. But you see that in games, he'll change formations. He'll make substitutions to try and affect and win games. And that's something I'm looking forward to, because I feel like all the last managers we've had have all waited until the 80th minute to make substitutions, and I'm including Pochettino in that as well. So it'd be refreshing to have a manager that, you know, is a bit more proactive rather than reactive when it comes to substitutions and managing a game.
Adrian, again, we are gonna talk about Thomas Frank now in a bit more detail, but it's time to move on from Ange. Yeah,
I mean, and I'm not going to throw darts at Frank. I said it before, just because he's coming. I was very angry when Ange was sacked. I was fully Ange in, but he's gone now. But also, as we're just raking over the coals for the last time, I mean, the players were also a problem too. You can't tell me this squad of players, if it went into next season, it would finish 17th. So maybe they had their eyes on the Europa League.
Yeah.
Maybe they took their foot off the gas. And there were too many individual errors throughout this season. We rave about our back five. Yeah, it's great on paper and it proved it to win us a trophy. But there were times when, I mean, someone was so out of form. Udogie started the season injured, didn't he? He never had a pre-season. I love the player. He started to show what he's made of towards the end of the season. Too little, too late. There are others. You know, Porro's fantastically superb technically, but defensively still questionable at times, you know. And then, like, there were even the goalkeepers, you know, made silly errors. You know, Kinski letting the ball slip through his arms in the first few minutes against Villa and things like that. So the players tend to do this. They fuse about a manager when they're gone. They never really look at themselves and blame themselves, do they? So we'll leave it there, Ian, I think, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. Harry Redknapp's comment, I thought, was telling when he said, if they're also, if they're so upset, why didn't they try harder for him? You know. Dave, let's talk about Thomas Frank. You alluded to it, to where I wanted to go with this. On the one hand, we've got a manager that I think we'd all agree, as Tom says, he's someone that was ready to take the next step up. I don't think there can be any doubt amongst football people that he was ready to take the next step up. But the board said in that statement, as I said, as you alluded to, that they wanted someone that could compete on all levels. But they picked somebody who hasn't competed in the Premier League other than keep a second division side in the Premier League, and has never competed in a cup competition or in Europe. So how do you see that playing out?
Yeah, it's an interesting conundrum, isn't it? And one that Spurs likes to do, conundrums. I think it's one of those ones
again,
where,
Kevin, by the way. Yeah, go on.
It's one of those ones where I think it's you're looking at his potential. I know, like Tom said, he's not the youngest manager out there, but he's proven in his stay in the Prem. Each year he's been able to reinvent or just tweak his Brentford setup to match what he's either lost or what he needs. And I think that's going to be brilliant for us because we need to be flexible. Even going back to Poch, we haven't been flexible for years. And this is why when our best team, our 1 to 11, are flying, you think back to Ali, Ericsson, Kane, Son, when they're in their pomp, when they're flying, and Vertonghen and all them guys, it's brilliant. The moment they all have a bad game, or 2 or 3 of those players have a bad game, you got to bring in someone off the bench, or you got to make a little adjustment. It all fell apart very, very easily. I think about when we lost to Colchester, it was in the League Cup under Pochettino. Like it just didn't work, and we had no other ideas. And Pochettino has since proved this at other stops, USA, with Chelsea, with PSG. He doesn't necessarily have the tactical flexibility to be able to really make those in-game changes that you might need. And so 1 to 11 again, and so now what we need to see is, again, Frank needs to be backed in the window. He wasn't necessarily my first choice. I wanted the Stuttgart manager, Seb Hunis. He's very tactically flexible. Again, working on a relatively limited budget, but had won a German Cup. Had taken them from similar to Thomas Frank in his story, but obviously younger. But I'm not unhappy with Thomas Frank, because
can I ask you a question?
He's going to be able to do the job.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things, and you're absolutely right, of course, about Ange with this, but what strikes me about our squad, even now, if you said the window's shut, this is the squad you're going with, you could play 3-5-2, you could play 4-3-3, you could play 3-5-2, you could play 3-4-3. With the current squad, you could adapt it now to play almost any system you wanted. And effectively,
yeah. But then my addition to that would be then when those 11 don't work, who's coming off the bench? And I think that's where we always fall down. I think back to when we got beaten 4-2, I think it was, by Chelsea in the League Cup semi-final. I think it was 2-2. Dele Alli was having a game of his life, and they brought off Eden Hazard and Diego Costa off the bench because they were able. That's how you build a squad. Now, obviously, we're not going to have the millions that Chelsea have, but if we're smart enough with our recruitment, you're able. And this is why, people, when we say go get Eze, people go, oh, where's he going to play? Is it, he's going to take Maddison's spot? No. That's the whole point. You get two players of good enough quality, and you say, right, this is how you build squads. You might play left. You might play left of in the 4-2-3-1. You might play in the 10. Maddison might have a dip in form. You might need an Eze to come in for 5-6 games. Champions League semi-final. Maddison might have played the week before against Liverpool, and you got Bayern Munich on the Wednesday. You have these levels of talent in your squad, so you don't have to have a massive dip, or you're playing in a position or in a formation where, you might be able to make adjustments, but it's not necessarily what really suits them. I think, like you said, I think we do have a squad where we can maybe make some changes now at 3-5-2, 4-3-3. I think the last time I was on, I was praising 4-2-3-1, and that's where I think we may be heading initially in pre-season, because I think the reality of the situation is, I think Thomas Frank is going to come in and go, right, he tends to build his teams from the midfield, and the main issue that we've had is that people just run straight for our midfield. When I was really impressed when Brentford played us, it might have been last season. I can't remember when it was. It was last season because Tony was there. And he changed to a front two up top, so he must have been playing 3-5-2. And where before, obviously, we've seen with teams playing against us that, they just leave one person out as an outlet, and they just make that long pass, into the wide channel behind our inverted fullbacks. What Frank did, he put Tony to literally man-mark Romero. And he had Neil Mopai just leaking off, picking up the scraps in those half spaces. Did that all game, and they beat us, I think, 2-0 or whatever it was. Things like that, where you just adapt it just for one game to get the 3 points and move on. Those are the kind of things that I think we need to have a bit more of that kind of approach to our football. I'm looking forward.
Before I bring you in, Tom, let me just say good evening to a few people in the chat. Milton Nebrega, good evening to you. Who have we not spoken to? Daniel, I think we got that time to move on. I will. That's please, if you haven't hit the like and subscribe button, please do. That's really important for us. Hi, Dad. That's Tom's dad, not mine. Good night, or even good evening, Nita. I hope you're still with us. That's. I'll need to highlight this. Whoops. Peter, you're an absolute superstar. Thank you. There are no words, my friends. Absolutely no words. Thank you. It's so appreciated. Nita's comment. We'll probably come back to this. Anita, she's here. Absolutely, Nita. No show's complete without you being here. Honestly, my darling. Thank you. Right, Tom. You've heard what Dave's had to say. I think you're very much in the same camp about being quite excited about what he might do tactically, and you've got your own ideas about how we might set up as well. Yeah,
I'm very excited, and the reason why I'm so excited is because I genuinely don't know what he's going to do. And I think under Postecoglou and even under Conte, and we could all very, very closely predict what our lineup was going to be for every single game. And I actually think that under Frank, we're not going to know from game to game what he's going to do, and I think that's refreshing. The added benefit of that as well is that the opposing teams aren't going to know what we're going to be necessarily doing as well. So, it kind of, there was that news story that came out that, it was well known amongst all the Premier League managers that, Ange Postecoglou's tactics have been sort of found out, and that was that. Then basically everyone sort of had the blueprint of what they needed to do to be able to beat us. Didn't always work, but teams did have that blueprint to be able to beat us. So I am very, very much looking forward. I think a lot will depend on if Romero stays or not as to how we'll play. I think if Romero stays, we'll play 3 at the back. If Romero goes, then it will depend on who we get in. And the reason why I say that is because if Romero stays, he is probably one of the best ball progressing defenders, even arguably defensive midfielders that there is. So I think if you're playing 3 at the back, then you can give him that license to be able to move forward with the ball and break lines with his passing and all of that, whilst you have 2 players behind him, and then you can get Udogie and Porro pushing out wide to be able to be hit by those passes. I think if Romero goes, then it's probably going to be easier to get in a very, very good defensive midfielder who is also good at progressing the ball than it is to be able to find a centre-back who can pass the ball as well as what Romero can. There are defenders who can do that. There's that guy at Sporting, Diamonde, I think his name is, who's been popping up a lot. He's very good at progressing the ball, but Sporting always ask extortionate money. We'll probably end up paying more for him than we're looking like we might get for Romero, which is ridiculous. So I think it'd be easier for us to get a midfielder who can progress the ball better, which then would lean me to say that we'd probably play 4 at the back if Romero does go.
Can I ask you something on that then? One thing that's always struck me as being sorry, someone's my partner's just coming in. About 3 at the back. It's not just about Romero. To me, it would really unleash the fullbacks, the wing backs. I just think we would have so much more flexibility if we could unleash Porro, Udogie, Spence, whoever, to go forward with much more impunity, knowing there was cover with 3 at the back, and particularly if you had a proper 6 that would hold that space that was so often exploited under Ange. Yeah,
100%. And let's face it, Udogie trained as a left wing back. He came into playing for Udinese as a left wing back. Porro at Sporting, was right wing back. Although actually under City he was a right winger when he was in the youth at City, but he was a right wing back. So and we've seen that Porro's got fantastic delivery. Udogie's got great take on ability and ball carrying ability, so that lends itself more for being a bit more attacking. I also think it would help Mickey van der Ven as well. It actually unleashes him a little bit because he can have those moments where he can progress forward with the ball himself, but also utilizes his pace a bit less often, but utilizes his pace in recovery and things like that as well. And Danso has already, when he came from Lens were playing 3 at the back, where he was playing the central centre back role as well. So actually a lot of our defenders, Dragusin also came from Genoa, who were playing 3 at the back. So most of our defenders have been accustomed to playing that thing. So having a manager, but I think it's important to have a manager that can flip and change between a back 4 and a back 5, because there's going to be games where you want to play a back 5 and games where you want to play a back 4, and having that flexibility does help with there. Moving on to like further up the pitch, it then depends whether or not how many midfielders Frank ends up wanting to play, how many attackers he ends up wanting to play and stuff as well. So, I could see him playing at like a 3-4-3, and then relying on like a Bergvall and then Pat Matassar in midfield. So they've got legs and energy in midfield, or even Bentancur could obviously slot into that, or you get another midfielder to help with that. And then you could have Solanke up top with then, at this present moment in time, if Son's still there, Son playing more like a left forward rather than a left wing, and Johnson playing a right forward rather than a right wing. So they're both closer to the goal to be able to make overlapping runs from Solanke picking up the ball and dropping a little bit deeper and getting involved in that way. But I think there's a lot of options, because you could play 2 up top as well. And if you're playing 2 up top, then you have Solanke and Richarlison, or Solanke and Johnson, or Solanke and Son, or Solanke and Tell. There is a lot of a lot of options to do lots of different things there.
Yeah. I'm surprised, Joe. You've got Edzi and Mbeumo on the bench, Tom.
Well, yeah, working with what we've got at this present moment. Like,
yeah,
but
absolutely.
That's the thing. Like, it's exactly what Dave said earlier. Was it always? I've seen it all over Twitter as well. It's like, well, if we get Eze, and what does that mean for Maddison? If we get like Mbeumo, what does that mean for Johnson? Well, no, the best way to improve your squad is to first of all improve your first 11 and get players that compete with each other and actually knock those starters down to the bench, and then you've actually got real competition there. Like for so long, we've always gone, oh yeah, we just need to improve the squad, improve the bench players. And it's like, no, improve the players on. How many times under Pochettino to go, oh well, you can't improve that first 11. It was like, well, yeah, you can. There's definitely, it clearly wasn't the best first 11 because we never won anything with it. Like, so you got to get better players in and have competition, and then it also means that if players are having a bit of a drop off in form, then you've got another player who can come in and pick up on that and stuff as well. So.
It's the Kane conundrum, isn't it? It's the Kane conundrum. You know, we'll looking all across Europe, going to strikers and going, "Hey, we're going to sign you to be the backup." No, go and buy a striker to compete with him. When he was in his pump, if we bought Alvarez, like Man City went out and did, you know, he's now you know at Atletico Madrid doing very well, you know, whatever. But if we went and got him and we said, right, you're good enough to start. Go fight it out. It also brings out the best in a Harry Kane because he knows he's got to be on his toes. You can't go through that January slump or your August slump or you know whatever slump you might have. You know, as great as he is, and I know we don't speak ill of the departed, but
no. Hey, Adrian, let me bring you in because you've been waiting patiently while I've allowed our guests to wax lyrical. Go and fill up my water as well while you're talking, but you've heard what the two of them have to say, and you know, even with the current players we've got, we still think we might be able to do a fair bit.
I've got a different take to Tom's, but they can all be added to the pot, can't they? With Frank, I mean, I don't think he's going to play three at the back that often. I think it will be a back with two holding midfield players. If you can't get what people call a really good defensive midfielder, we've seen what we've done with two holding midfield players away to West Ham, you know, away to Brentford when we won, and the 3 away games in the Europa League, and that made us look a lot more solid. And when I've seen Frank, I've only just watched a bit of his tactical stuff recently since we got him in because I always wait, and he likes to not get two-man overloads on the left or right. He likes to get a triangle of 3 players on the left or right on an overload, right? And I think he'd be more inclined to do what Mourinho did or I didn't like, right? Whereby the team are going to have to be more disciplined. The players are going to have to be more disciplined. Well, so if you doggies going forward to make that 3 triangle, Porro's got to stay back and make the back 3. Then you'll make a back 3. Same the other way around. If Porro goes forward, you doggies a lump anyway. He could play as a centre back. You know what I mean? He will come back and make a back 3. I think up front. You can do virtually what you want. I mean, I'd like if we're going to play a 3 though, I'd like the wingers. I don't mind them being wide on the halfway line. When we're going forward, I want it to be narrow because if you're wide, trying to get to the close space to narrow the space between you and Solanke or Richarlison to score a goal, then why not have your wingers there in the first place and save them having to do that? Why not have a front 3 where 2 of your wingers are on the corners of the penalty area and your strikers in the middle are on the penalty spot? Like that. So it's just a different option. I mean, I don't know what rank. When he played against us, he played a 4-2-3-1. He did play that against us, but it's just an option. I mean, we don't know. I think he would. I think that would work really well for us. I think the 4-2-3-1 at the moment we're well suited to because we got to see if we're going to bring in another very strong defensive-minded midfielder in. I mean, we keep playing our number 8s. There, that's fine. It's worked with like Bentancur, you know, alongside Basuma, or I don't want at the club, right? And it, you know, it has worked. The midfield pivot has worked. So if you've seen it work, Frank will have seen it work. So obviously, I mean, the guy spends hours, don't I reckon he works a 60, 70 hour day. So like, you know, I mean, not a day a week, right? That'd be some going, wouldn't it? Eh?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Meanwhile,
back to you, unless no one else wants to
No,
rebut what I said.
No. I was just going to say, Adrian, I completely agree. I think he probably will come in and play a 4-2-2-3-1. I'm just saying that there is that flexibility there to be able to do both, because obviously in playing a 3-4-3 or whatever, that leaves Maddison out. But if you're playing your attackers more narrow, then actually Maddison could play as one of those attacking players who drops into the midfield.
And Tom, then your fullbacks can get down to the corner flag areas then, rather than relying on inverted players. You know, you can get them down on a corner flag.
Also, this season, just going back to your fullbacks, like with one drop in whilst the other one goes and stuff, actually Brentford a lot this season, because they ended up having to play Keane Lewis Potter, who was a winger at left back. What they actually did is they actually played the whole game kind of lopsided. So he was allowed to kind of just bomb on back and forward, and their right back actually stayed a lot more sort of deeper throughout the whole game. So it wouldn't be like a case of that one goes, that one stays. It was always that way going. And actually Porro could do that, because then Porro could actually play more of like a quarterback kind of role. He's got that passing to be able to stay a bit deeper and just kind of like ping long passes. And one thing about Thomas Frank I do like is that he's very much Brentford, out of all the teams in the Premier League, and Spurs fans will hate this, actually played the most passes in their own box out of any team in the whole of the Premier League last season. They very much keep that ball in our defensive third. I need to say ours now with Frank. In our defensive third is how he's going to play. And then as soon as that moment gets to like where they feel like, okay, we've drawn players out, we can attack, it's boom, ball goes, we attack. And there's quite a few goals that they scored last season where it's very much, playing around the back. Oh, there's free space there, and then boom, long ball over into the corner for Embremo or Visser to run onto, and they were through and gone and stuff. So it's exciting, but I can see a few Spurs fans getting a bit, especially with Vicario being that guy who's meant to be doing all of that passing. I can see us maybe getting a little bit nervous of not as nervous as if it was Lloris in goal, but you know.
Let me bring Adrian in and then Dave on this particular point that you've made me think of. One of the things that always gets me is coaches have a preferred way of playing. And some, I mean, you could argue, for example, Pochettino, he plays 4-2-3-1, and that seems to be the only way he knows how to play. He doesn't seem capable of finding another way to play. You look at Amorim, where he was at Sporting, where he was very successful, went to Man United and tried playing this 3-4-3 formation, and he didn't have the players to play it. One of the things that impresses me about Frank is he does seem to be capable of adapting his squad, his system to match the players that he's got, which is a skill that a hell of a lot of decent coaches don't seem to have. I mean, Amorim's being an example of putting his teams in trouble because he's playing players he's got absolutely square pegs in round holes all over the place.
Well, I'm not a great, I don't know, I'd like to get Coach Dave's thought on this, but I'm not a great believer in plan B, right? If Frank is the type of coach that puts so many hours into a game and studies the opposition, then like Harry Redknapp used to say, I mean, he would bring a player on that gave you something different rather than and hoping that they could change things for the better, rather than have a complete tactical change as such. Now, it could be tactical in the sense if you had a 6'5" striker, you brought him on and started hitting long balls or something like that. That would be obvious, right? But I don't. I mean, in a lot of games, I mean, when you bring subs on, I mean, like you could actually like then say, right, we're going to switch to a back three or whatever, but you know, and hope that it affects the game more. But I think once you put all your groundwork into your game plan, then it's a question of doing it better or imposing it and making it work. As far as I'm concerned, I don't think there's too much you can do. Some days they're just not your days and things that don't work out for you, but they should most of the time if you've got a good manager. And Frank, like, he is tactically astute, so I expect him to get it right most of the time.
Okay, Dave, you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I think some managers are are loath to change formation or whatever because they think it may signal an abandoning of principles. But I think what I like with Frank is that whatever formation he might play, even if he changes mid-game, his principles stay the same, even if the patterns change. So, like how Tom was saying, he's going to be quite patient in their build-up. They're going to wait to strike on the opportune moment. They're not going to rush. Doesn't matter, what point in the game they are, whether it's the 80th or the 20th minute. So again, like I said, the patterns may change in terms of what's in front of you. Is it 3-5-2? Is it 4-3-3? But the principles are still the same. And I think as long as he communicates his principles well, which all things look like that's how he comes across, and I think the players will respond to that. We'll be in a very strong position because I do think we've got, especially amongst some of the younger players, the tactical and technical flexibility and ability to be able to do it. You think about Archie Gray, Lucas Bergvall, Adoji, and even maybe some of the older ones like Madison, who can take on a little bit more flexibility to say, right, how do I attack this half space? How do I attack that half space? How do I make the most of this particular matchup when I'm going up against this winger or when I'm going up against this midfielder from this particular team, as opposed to just this is the way we play against all the other teams that we're going to play in the league or cup competition, whatever the case may be. And we saw it, didn't we, to a certain extent with Andrew, just too little, too late with the Europa. He did change things around. But to be honest, I think then he did go away from the patterns, and then I think he did go away from his principles. So let's see what he does. I do think he'll be a 4-2-3-1 to start with. I think Bergvall will be one of those. We may see probably. I think just for seniority and experience, I think it'll be Bergvall and Bentancur, out of the players we do have. But I would like to see us sign someone else to play in that role, maybe a more, like I said, specifically defensive-minded midfielder.
Yeah.
And let's see what happens in front in terms of the front four players, the 10.
I think we all know that we want some better players. And I think this whole point about you strengthen your first team and some of the players that are maybe on the fringes. I mean, Tel would be an example. Would be there to fight for a place rather than just necessarily having an automatic first team plus. But let's talk about some players. Let's start with you on this, Tom. Lots of stories about Son leaving. That he's interested now in Galatasaray. He's got a good relationship with Mourinho. Whether they can afford him's another matter, or going to Saudi. What's your thought about Son?
I think that it is now the perfect time to sunset on his Spurs career. Be it Fenerbahce, not Galatasaray. I don't want to offend the Turkish league, be it he goes to be honest, I don't mind where he goes. It's irrelevant to me, but I think now is the perfect time to do it, because although I think actually prime peak Son would be perfect for a Thomas Frank system and Thomas Frank way of playing, he's not that, because he wants his attackers to have pace and legs to go running beyond the defenders, and I just don't think Son's got that in his locker anymore. So I just think now is the perfect moment. Like he's had that trophy, go be it to Turkish league or the Saudi league, get 30 million at least for him, and progress from there.
Dave, you've been nodding in agreement as well.
Yeah, listen, it's one of the ones where because of Bilbao, he can do whatever he wants. If he stays, I don't begrudge him. If he stays next year, okay, cool, fine. You get some. He's one of them players that you'll get frustrated with him watching him struggle to beat his man, or he'll do a couple step overs and take a shot, and you're like, why don't you just cross it? And then at the end of the game, you're like, but it's Son. You don't really care. And I think after Bilbao, you won't care anymore because he's at the top now for us. You know, he's got the trophy that he stayed to get. You know, he said that he was gonna stay loyal to the club, and he did as a captain. He's putting in a shift. He's been a great ambassador for the club. There's never been no scandal, never been no drama.
No,
so he wears it on his sleeve, heart, brain, everywhere. You know, he's proper, Spurs man, and he's got the trophy. So if we do sell him, great. It's going to give us a chance to get some money and reinvest, especially in the forward positions, which I think that's where that money would probably go to. But if he sticks around for an extra year, I wouldn't begrudge him. But it'll be interesting to see how he adapts to a new role, because I don't think Thomas Frank is going to be as sentimental as the fans will be. Because, you're going to need some legs. But I think we talked about maybe 3-4-3 or 3-5-2. I think in the 2, with a Solanke, I think then we may see a bit better from Son, because the problem is Son spent the past few years with Ange, and you think about Conte and other managers that we've had since Poch, playing in roles that were just not suited to him as he's got older. Back to goal as a striker. No, that's never been his game.
No, absolutely.
Out wide as a touchline winger, never really been his game. But running into those spaces, running off a big man, off those passes from Kane and whatnot, that was his game. Operating in the chaos. That's always been cutting in, getting those shots off. Can he do it off Solanke? Can he do it in the 4-2-3-1? Let's see if he does stick around.
But if we're going to have the ball played in front of attackers, which we would expect under Thomas Frank, Tell or De Beer, Edzi, Sameo, Mbeumo, all of those players would be far better at that role than Son now.
Yeah.
Adrian, what's your thoughts?
Up to him.
Yeah, Son hasn't looked good on the eye test. I mean, we go to the stadium. That's lot enough of us go with seasons ago, wasn't that? But his numbers are good. He's lost the afterburners, but he hasn't lost the pace. I mean, he's still very pacey. He's still quicker than most of them out there. I mean, he lost Matty Cash. I don't know how quick Matty Cash is, and Cameron at Villa for pace a couple of times during that game. They couldn't keep with him, and he was running with the ball, not running freely. So he's not slow. I mean, but he is nearly 33, and it would make commercial sense to sell him. I mean, if he went to Saudi, even better. I know they want him because they would probably play 35 to 50 mil for him. If he goes to Fenerbahce, they're going to offer us like £3 because you know what they're like in European leagues, right? So this is a decision that should be left to the player. Sonny, you could see considering or waiting to have a chat with Frank, because as Dave alluded to, I think, Europa Cup, job done. So now it's a question of, do I want to play in the Champions League next season? And look, we need as many other ready and experienced players as we've got, right, for that, because we're not good enough to win it by a long shot, are we? I'm miles away from it. So, and so we need him for that. You could need him for that. It would be handy to keep around, uses even starting games or be an impact sub. But it does make commercial sense to sell him if we get an offer and if he wants to go. This should be left up to the player. Should be. Okay. We owe him that. We owe him that.
I'll give you a point to think about just while I'm going to go open up the chat and catch up with those comments. Spurs Express tweeted about 5 minutes ago, hashtag Tottenham are amongst the clubs keeping tabs on Alessandro Garnacho. Just to let that sink in for a bit. Let's just catch up. So, whoops, sorry. Son won't go anywhere ahead of the pre-season tour. There's a.
He'll want to play in Korea, won't he? He'll want to play in Korea in the tournament with Newcastle.
A bit cynical, but
K-League team.
Ben, good evening again, sir. Make some money on Sonny's, so either sell him for big bucks or give him 2 years extension to milk the. Yeah, unfortunately, that's the way it is at our club at the moment. Still. Paul Brown, good evening, Paul. comment there from Nita. We run down older players in England, European, South America, and African teams respect older players. That's why they have players in their teams 30 plus with young players. That feeds ability. Yeah, I mean, I understand that, Nita, but I do think you need the kind of legs to play a 38 game domestic season and then 15 games in Europe and League Cup and what have you. We ask an awful lot of our players. And then a comment from Dan, they lost Ivan Toney, and yet all their front three each had the best seasons in the league, all goals, so we can adapt to different scenarios as well. Yeah, I think that's probably fair. And then Kevin, I know. Let's play 3-2-5. Oh, okay. I don't know how old you are, sir, but do you remember when Ozzy Diaz was our coach? I think it was the 5-5 formation. Were you not entertained? Let's go back. Nita raised the point that Romero's on his way. I really don't know, Tom. Let me bring you in first. What are your thoughts?
Oh, don't know. He's arguably one of the best defenders in the world, but if his heart's not in it and he don't want to be here, and Frank can't convince him to stay, then now's the time to sell him because he's only going to get cheaper with his contract running down. Just on this, I was watching the show on Friday. I was going to jump in, but I thought, no, I'll stay out of it. And there was a lot of talk about the best teams don't sell their best players. And I couldn't disagree more with that, because actually what the best teams do is they sell their players at the right time. And Spurs have never sold their players at the right time. If we could hold on to all of the best world-class players in the world forever, then great. But if we were doing that, that probably means that we were winning a lot of stuff, and we're not, or haven't. We have now obviously won something, but we weren't. That I would say the one thing that there's been this thing that Spurs buy young players to grow them and sell them. But when was the last time we sold a player for a massive profit? Can anyone name one?
Well, I mean, apart from Kane and Ericsson went for 16 mil with 6 months left on his contract, which was good business. Kane, we always knew was going. We knew Ericsson was going. But then you have to go back to 2017 for Kyle Walker. And then you go back to 2012-13 for Modric and Bale. And they were the last times. Right?
That's horrendous. The fact that you have to go back 15 years to pick a player that we sold for a decent profit. Like Ericsson, we sold for 4 million profit on what we bought him for. Yes, okay. He, that was good with 6 months left on his contract. But had we sold him in the summer when he actually wanted to leave in the summer, you would have got more than that. Like at one point with Dele Alli, Real Madrid offered us 80 million and we turned it down. That, hindsight's obviously a wonderful thing, but selling your players at the right time is clearly the right thing to do. We turned down a bid from United for Eric Dyer for like 40 odd million when Mourinho was United's manager. We have been terrible at selling our players at the right time. Because actually, if we had sold, Delhi for that 80 million, you could have reinvested, and 80 million back then, we're only talking like, 10, not even 10 years ago, but back then that would have bought you a lot of very, very good players to grow the next ones. And I just think, if Romero wants to go and he can't get on board with it, then sell him and get as much money as you possibly can and get the next best thing to be able to do it. So
the thing with that, though, is the market's been in a period of deflation for quite a few years now through COVID and people trying to, get their revenue streams back up to speed. I mean, and then you get like Atletico Mid would like to buy Romero, right? We're not selling unless it's for the right amount of money. He's on 2 years on his contract. And the thing is, like, They've just got in Clement Longley, who I think is a fantastic bowler of a centre-back, but he can only play in a deep line back four because you can't play him on a high line because he's got no pace, right? That's why he failed at Barcelona. Didn't mean he was a bad footballer. He just went to work under a wrong manager type, But I don't think Atletico can afford him, and who can? Who can? PSG don't need him. You got Barcelona, Real Madrid.
Adrian.
But yeah, hang on, Tom. Let me stop you a sec because there's a fifth face on the screen or ahead at the moment. So can I say a very good evening to Jem Silverstone? Good evening, Jem. How are you?
Good evening. Oh well, thank you. How are you?
Good. I could not be better.
Good to see you.
We've sort of talked about Ange and Frank, which I'll bring you in on briefly because I don't think everyone would listen or want to hear the same stuff again. But we're now talking about the kind of the players who might be there, who might not be, with the transfer window opening tomorrow. But let's finish this about Romero. In fact, let me bring you in on Romero. We've had discussions privately about Romero. Romero, I think the comment I made to you was maybe Romero's not as good as some people think he is. Your response to that was, I don't think Romero's as good as he thinks he is. But you were in Bilbao and you saw the world-class player there that was never going to not win that game of football. So there clearly is a tremendous player there who, if he wants to play, can be absolutely exceptional.
Yeah, and that's the point. If he wants to play, and I thought his form generally last season was very poor, but there was a point in the quarter-final where it just seemed to dawn on him that he might be the one lifting that trophy, and the thought of that glorious moment seemed to change him profoundly, and he seemed to be motivated beyond anything that we'd seen previously this season.
Yeah. So I'll go back to Dave on it in a minute, but I mean, Tom, you did hear Tom make the point about we've been notoriously bad at selling players at peak. Now it's a bit like selling your shares at peak. Who knows when you've reached the peak? But the examples Tom gives are really good. That we've never, we've had good bids for players that we've turned down for players whose values have plummeted.
I think Tom's taking a very negative view there. I like to take a positive view. So Tom says we've been notoriously bad at selling them, at the right time. I like to take a positive view and say we've been notoriously good at selling them at the wrong time.
or not selling them at all and them going somewhere on a free. Yeah.
Yeah. Dave, what's your take on this?
Yeah, listen, I think we can all agree Romero is one of them. When he wants to, he's a top defender. And I think you're right. Once from the quarterfinal onwards, he just turned around and went, you know what, this is going to be me. I think Van der Ven kind of let us in on a secret. When he was talking about how Ange had a word and said, you're not going to play every game. You're going to save you for Thursdays. And I think Romero realised that. And Romero was like, look, I've only got 4 games left. If I play well in these 4 games, you're going to see my armpits raised.
Yeah.
And I'll go down as a hero. And you think about all the comments he made through the season. When he got injured, didn't like the physios, didn't like what the club was doing. He talked about Daniel Levy not backing managers. He's made all these slide jabs, even in his statement, recently, whatever. I think he really wanted to stick it to the board. And I think that probably motivated him as well. He just has these personal quests that probably drive everyone else a bit nuts. You wish he would be a bit more of a team player, but when he's on side, and I say that, excuse the fun, but when he's really mucking in, he's a top player. But can you guarantee that for the next, if we give him an extension, can you guarantee that for the next 4 or 5 years to build a defense around him under this new manager? I don't know. So if he is going to go, it will have to be this year. And I don't think he can take the risk. But it has to be for the right money. I think we have to make sure we get the right money for him. the market might be a little bit deflated. But listen, let's get the money's worth, and go from there. I think both him and Son will probably have a conversation with Frank when Frank gets in, over the coming days or whatever. But also, like I said at the beginning of the show, Daniel Levy now has to back himself according to that statement he put out when Andy was like, look, if Daniel Levy goes out and spends a lot of money and buys 2 to 3 top players, doesn't even about the money, but one marquee signing and then 2 players where we go, wow, our first 11's really been beefed up. And Romero knows that when he walks back in July 5th or whatever, he's going to be around quality to go and compete on multiple fronts. Just like that statement said, I think he's in a better position to go. Where do I sign?
Okay. I thought the comment that came out after, so as soon as Frank was being announced, that he wants Nathan Collins to join him from Brentford, was the clearest indication that he knows and he's been told that Romero's on his way, and that's who he's got his eye on as a replacement.
Yeah, it could be. I think it's, again, it could be just about building a squad. Dance's done very well.
Okay, right.
Yeah,
So let's do a roll call before we move on. Adrian, keep or sell Romero?
Keep him every day of the week and twice on Sundays.
Tom?
If Romero is invested and signs a new contract, keep him. If he doesn't sign a new contract, sell him.
Yeah. Dave?
Yeah, if he's 100%, keep him.
Jim?
Yeah, at least 3 years, or he can go tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay. I'll go with that. I'll go exactly that. Let me catch up again on the chat here. We can sell Romero. I can guarantee the replacement will be of lesser quality. I think that's always the danger. And I don't know that Nathan Collins and Cuti Romero really should be talked about in the same breath. But
one's a team player, one plays for himself.
Yeah, 50 million it was for Dye. Just makes it even worse. B night, evening all. There you go. Nito Rose, because I'm going to come on to your question in a minute. You just running your mouth, learn to wear the badge, then you can talk. 8 minutes of my words, Coys. No, you aren't. Absolutely right. Kevin Standard says keep, and Joe Blogs, keep Romero until he can be sold as suits the club. But the problem is his contract starts to run down. He's got 2 years left come 30th of June. So I think unless he's signing, I'm with the boys, unless he's signing an extension, it's adios. Yeah, Dave, that's why I thought there was a private message came up on the thing. Dave, I said if you can do an hour for me, because Jem said he could do an hour as well. So that's absolutely perfect. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for coming on, Dave.
Hopefully see you again. Always love your contribution, Dave. Thank you.
All good. Have a good one, guys.
See you later, mate. Bye.
Thank you.
A good time to plug the channel in. We're an hour in.
He's gone.
He's gone, yeah. Good time to plug the channel. We're an hour in, yeah.
Go on.
For those of you viewing us, if you want to subscribe to the channel, you'll find the red subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner. We can't see it because we're live at the moment. We also have a Facebook group with 49,000 members. We've got a Facebook page with about 300 because the videos go out there. We're on XCOM under my name with 3,200 followers I've got on there because the videos go out live there. And our shows during the season go out Tuesdays at 9 o'clock and Sundays at 9 o'clock. And Drusilla does a Friday show with me at 10 o'clock UK time because it better suits the Canadian, American and Southern Hemisphere supporters. Right. So it just helps them that extra hour. So we've got that. So if you like the content, please subscribe to the channel. And a big up to anyone who's watching us on Playbook. You've got our admiration for watching us on playback. And just below here, we've got a form here because Spurs Kings, who are run by Marlon and Ash Matic, fantastic supporters. They run an excellent podcast, and they're doing a little competition. There's no rewards for it amongst a long list of podcasters in all sorts of groups. And we've been nominating two as best newcomer because we're a fledgling group and only been going a year. And also we've been nominated for most underrated podcast as well. So we would like you to vote for us naturally. I mean, by all means, vote for others there. Keep the community buzzing. And
you can vote as often as you like.
That's going to be interesting when these votes are finally announced. I should imagine there might be some eyebrows raised as people can vote for as many as they want. So we'll see how it turns out. But it is a bit of fun, and it's nice for all these podcasters to receive a bit of recognition for all the work they do. They don't get paid for it. So I mean, So
once we get our first million votes, maybe people will think there's a. But anyway, Harmless Potatoes in the house. So good evening, Just a Harmless Potato. So good to hear from you as well. Need to put a question earlier in the chat. If Romero and Son goes, who becomes club captain? And that's an interesting question, Jem.
For me, at the moment, Maddison, I think is the closest thing there is to a leader within the club. I think Vicario is undoubtedly passionate. Haven't seen anything from anybody else that really makes me think that they're captain or leader material, if I'm honest. And I think, we've spoken about this ad nauseum. It's something we've been missing for a long time.
I was just going to say, Tom, as Jem just highlighted, one of the major problems with the club.
I think a lot's going to depend on who comes in and who Thomas Frank, warms to or likes. If Son and Romero go, then Maddison would be the obvious choice as the leaders that are there currently. There's been obviously a lot of noise coming out from the club about how they see Bentancur as a potential leader and stuff as well. But maybe not for me. But that's when you could go, well, what about Mickey van der Ven? What about the only problem with Mickey van der Ven is how many games is he going to play? So it's a tough one. It's definitely a tough one, but it's I don't feel the captain plays as an important role in modern day football as what they used to back even when I was a kid, and stuff. So I think it's more about everyone on the pitch than it is like just a solitary captain. I don't think there's many times where people look to a captain now to be the one to grab them by the scruff of the neck and drag them through a game and stuff like that, like it was back when you had your Roy Keanes and John Terrys and such like people as captains. So I don't think that's a big worry issue to concern about.
Adrian?
For me, well, if you're looking at a captain, you're then sort of virtually telling that player is going to play a majority of the games. Vicario is going to do that. But as it's not such an important role, I'd give it to Decky. He played 40 games last season. He's captain of Sweden. I'm not that fussed about captains nowadays, but I'd give it to him because I think he's going to play. If he's fit, he's going to play. We're guaranteed 48 games this season. He played 40 last season. Porro actually played the most games, over 4,000. He played about 50. So the guy's superhuman. But I would give it to Decky.
I've got bad news for you. I'm selling Decky this summer.
All right,
that's exactly a player to cash in on. To me, Decky.
Okay.
I don't think it's about the captain. I think it's about the leader on the pitch. And of course, we know there's a difference.
Decky's one of those players I would cash in on. But look, let's Adrian, you put this on Richarlison to say. I mean, I'll bring you in, Adrian, on this. Isn't this a classic case of his value is never going to be any higher? He's not going to score 80 goals next year and be a 200 million player.
Look, I want him and Basuma to go, right? The reason I put the banner up is because Frank likes those pair of players, which I find alarming, personally, to me, because I don't want them. You might not want Decky. I mean, others in the chat and elsewhere, I'll have different opinions. I don't want either. I don't want Richarlison and I don't want Basuma. Basuma's had more than enough chances to prove himself. No good coming late in the season. Where was you when we needed you? You know, I mean, so, and Richie as well. I mean, like, you're a centre forward. Score goals. At least, I mean, Solanke got castigated, but he got 15 or 16 goals and 8 assists this season in all comps. I don't think it's too bad for a first season. Richarlison has been here a while. He just can't get on a run and score goals. I mean, like, so to me, I'm getting rid of him. But I think Frank will keep him because that's why he liked Tell to come in, because he likes those players, front players that work their socks off, basically. But you know, we need.
I'll tell you what intrigues me about him, Adrian, is his ability not to pronounce Richarlison correctly. Ian, what's that all about?
Well, calling him Richarlison.
Yeah. Do you know something we don't?
He does it. He does it with so many players' names. It's unreal. Itzy. Who's Itzy? Eze. His name is Eze, not Itzy.
Okay. Right. Is this have a go at Ian night?
Yeah.
I mean,
That's
I look. I'm looking like. Do you get a net gain out of Richarlison?
I feel like going red here.
Do you get a net gain? I mean, Liverpool won the league with 86 goals. That's low this season. That's low. Man United, when Haaland was firing, they raised the bar to about 100. I think Arsenal scored 90 and came second the other season. I think we scored 86 in the year we came second. I mean, where are we getting 86 goals from? So having hard-working players, but they've got to score goals. The wingers have got to score goals as well. I don't want fancy wingers that don't score goals.
Right.
I mean, even if they get assists, that's fine if you get loads of assists, but you've still got to chip in. I mean, a 1 in 4 strike rate is always considered good for a winger. So
that left-sided player from Crystal Palace, he scored a lot of goals.
Yeah, and he'll get you more than a required 10, won't he? So, like, that's good, right? But I don't know what you think about Richarlison. I just look, if we're going to upgrade this squad, he has to go. So does Basuma, in my opinion.
Yeah. The problem is, Adrian, is that to make a transfer work, you need 3 parties to all agree, and unfortunately, I think the only way Richarlison goes is if he's told you are not going to play any games, and he's not going to do that in a World Cup. Yeah, he'll go.
He can dig his heels in. He's got 2 years. He can dig his heels in.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a difficult one. I would sell Richarlison. Not for his playing ability not being up to standard, but more just his availability not being up to standard and stuff like that. Well, so it's I would sell Richarlison if you could.
I would suffer it if it meant we got Eze and Mbuemo, and then we got like Paul Lina off of Bayern, and we didn't have money for a striker. I would suffer it if we got 3 players like that. I would suffer it. But he still would be upgrading.
He's not a striker, though, is he?
No, I'd rather play Lancashire. I really would. He's a natural finisher.
But Tell's whole youth career has been spent as playing as a central striker. The only reason why he started playing on the left was because that was the only position he could get into the Bayern Munich team. So, Frank likes his front 3 to play much more narrow to the goal, pick the ball up and head towards the goal, which is exactly what Matthijs Tell likes to do. Like, playing as a touchline winger is not Matthijs Tell's sort of game.
No.
So,
that's something. Brennan Johnson's game.
Yeah, 100%.
That's what I really hope that Frank can do, is bring out the best in players in a way that I don't think Ange did.
Yeah.
I think he's got to look at each player and say, okay, how can you fit into this system? What can you really do to add value to it? Because there were too many players last season that really were underperforming.
I mean, you're right. I mean, when Son's been at his best is when he's virtually on the corner of penalty area, taking a couple of strides to the right and trying to curl one into the far corner. So if your wingers play narrow, even Johnson, although Johnson's got a lot of goals, he's got a great instinct. I've warmed to the player this season. I've warmed to him. But I think we would get more goals. I just think we would score even more goals if we played the wider players, as inside rights and inside lefts rather than out and out wingers.
I haven't warmed to Johnson at all. I still think he's a waste of space most of the time. And yeah, he scored a few tap-ins, but really his contributions other than those tap-ins across the season,
but Frank won't allow him to do that, though.
Very disappointing. I would love to see Frank bringing out the best in him, because I know there's so much more.
Yeah, right, Jem, can I ask that? Let me ask you that on that basis then. Is he a player that you would look to cash in on if there was a possibility of getting decent money for him? Or, and remember, Thomas Frank wanted to sign him from Nottingham Forest. Is he exactly the kind of player that Frank will work with, motivate, change his position slightly to invert more, that terrible word now, but invert more rather than staying wide, and really bring out the best? Because the one thing he can do is finish. He does know where the goal is.
If there was a replacement who I knew was going to score the same number of goals but could add a lot more assists, then yeah, I would definitely get rid of him. And I think, that's he didn't strike me as a player who really was motivated, and I fail to see why a player in his position, with his reputation, with his eye for goals, why does he just disappear from games for so long? Is it a fitness problem? Is it a motivation problem? There was something just not right about his game for me.
I think him and Werner, when Werner even played, I think they were told to just stay out there, because any player that's got a footballing brain would get back if you're in trouble. Harry Kane does it. Slanky does it. They come back and help out. I mean, to me, that's down to Ange. That's down to Ange. And he has put in some shifts. He put in a shift actually in the final when he scored the goal, whether you think it was his goal or not.
Well, it wasn't his goal, was it? He screwed it up completely. It was just, he got lucky.
But he scored a lot of goals. Yeah.
Quick round the table. Richarlison, whatever his name is. Richarlison, sell or keep? Jem.
Sell.
Tom?
Yeah, sell.
And that's 4. That's Britain's Got
Talent. The guy has just got no footballing brain from what I can see. No. He's morose. He doesn't really understand. He has an uncanny ability to be in the wrong place at the right time.
I somewhat disagree. I think he is a good player. I just don't think he ever can manage to play more than 10 games without getting an injury. And I think if you're so in and out of injury, you're never at the full peak of your fitness, and therefore you can never get yourself like a run of games to actually build any momentum. He does know, he knows how to score. As for his career, I think he's averaged a goal every 3 games, which is not electric by any stretch of imagination. But at the same time, he's played actually half of his games as a left midfielder, left winger, so rather than a striker. And I think that's the biggest thing for me, is I don't actually see him as a striker. In fact, he could be a good another one of these inverted left forwards who actually his job is to run in behind and use his sort of pace and power to be able to run onto the ball to score goals. But I just think it's been for 4 years now. I think it's just time to move on, despite the fact that I think he could be a good player. I just don't think he's at the level that we particularly need, and especially in terms of his availability as well.
And this goes back to really, I suppose, your point earlier about ruthlessness. We need to be ruthless if we want to really improve. And that brings me on Adrian neatly. Oh, by the way, I do have this Club World Cup. Not that I'm that interested in it, but Our next competitive opponents are Paris Saint-Germain, who have beaten Atleti 4-0 tonight. So that would be a dead easy game in Udinese. Just to fill you in on that.
Hopefully they'll be so knackered from playing all of this football that
exactly.
We talked about that on Friday, I think.
And we got.
Bissouma.
I'm done with Bissouma. I'm done with him. Really, he's had more than enough chances to prove himself. Oh, you're going to see me, the new me, blah blah blah, and all that, and like, nah. When he's had to sit deep and he's got someone to watch him and stand by him, he's looked all right. He can't do it on his own. He's sloppy passing, and some of the passes, sloppy passes across midfield and all. Technically, he's very good, but he's just we don't see what we saw in Brighton to get him. We got him cheap. We get our money back. Get rid of him.
Jem, you and I had a conversation. I don't know whether it was the Thursday after Bilbao or the Friday. I think it was whenever you'd got home anyway, and just to catch up. And we both agreed on one thing, that Bissouma was the man of the match. I mean, it was a big field of contenders, but I really thought he stepped up brilliantly when Lucas was injured.
I thought so too, and I whilst I respect Adrian's view, I disagree. I think he's a player that brings something to the party that no other does, and that's that ability to really drive forward from midfield. He's clearly not done it enough, and again, I'd love to see Frank really using him as that more attacking midfielder, because I think he genuinely, is one of the few players that we have that can really run with the ball and frighten defenders.
I mean, Tom, I'm going to bring you in, but one of my criticisms of our midfield, and I think part of this was the way that Ange played, is I just got the feeling they were all too much the same. Bentancur, Bergvall, Gray, Sarr, Bissouma, whoever I've left out. I think I've left out one.
Maddison.
Maddison's actually, funnily enough, the exception. But those sort of 5 players competing in those 2 positions were just doing too much the same thing. As Jem says, there's no box-to-box or real driver piling forward, breaking behind the lines. Sarr not doing it enough. Bissouma not doing it enough. Bentancur not doing it very much at all. And it's saying, how is Thomas Frank is he going to just take them all out and buy new midfield players, or is he going to try and get those midfield players playing to their potential? Because I don't think any of them were playing to their potential last year.
So I'll answer your question sort of twice in terms of, I think the reason why the players all seem so similar was due to the tactics that we were playing. We were playing a 3-man midfield where one was meant to be slightly deeper than the other 2. So you always had, but the problem is none of those players were specialised at playing that deeper role, that defensive midfield role. Which then meant that basically you had Sarr, Bissouma, Bentancur, Bergvall all kind of vying for that more box-to-box position. And then it was like, oh, okay, well, and then the other one can play the more defensive role. Adrian, like we said earlier that, we're expecting Thomas Frank to play sort of a double pivot midfield, and actually Bissouma, the player that we bought from Brighton, he was in a double pivot midfield at Brighton, and he wasn't the most defensive. He was the guy who kind of, the ball would be won back, it would give it to him, and then he would take a man on and release it. So I see that. I think Thomas Frank will really, really like Bissouma.
Yeah.
However, I think he's only got 1 year left on his contract.
Yeah.
And therefore, you need to make a decision that do you want to, if you're gonna keep him, you've got to renew the contract, and therefore, okay, you're maintaining value, but then you're potentially getting yourself stuck with a player that hasn't been to what we expected when we first bought him from Brighton, you could potentially be stuck with that for another 3 or 4 years. Or you sell a player that potentially Thomas Frank might really, really like and might do really, really well when he's thing. But I wouldn't be surprised if we ended up keeping him. We gave him an extra 3-year contract, and he set the world on fire for the first 15 games, and then all of a sudden he disappears and he turns back to absolute crap again. That's my one worry. I think if you get a decent offer for him, then sell him and invest in someone else who can potentially do that role better, more consistently. So I think Basuma on his day is one of the best midfielders in the Premier League. Problem is that only happens maybe 2-3 match day games in a season, which is not good enough for what we need.
Sorry,
no,
Adrian,
no.
What's your take on that?
Sorry,
Adrian. Sorry, I said, what's your take on that?
Well, I hope Basuma proves me wrong if he stays. Obviously, I do that with any player that I'm not keen on. I don't know. I think Conte questioned his mentality, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, with Basuma, let's face it, none of the managers that have he's worked under at Spurs have really chosen him, have they? They've not. Conte never really played him. Ange came in, did start playing him, and then he sort of went out of the team, and then he started playing him, and then he went out of the team. He sort of flooded. So he's never really been a manager's go-to. And let's face it, beginning of last season, the laughing gas incident, and then also last season he got 3 suspensions and stuff like that. There's a lot there that I would say. I personally would sell him, because I think you can find a player that can do what he does more consistently. It's just with the problem is we've got lots of players, lots of positions that we want to kind of invest in and improve in, and we are very much in a situation not because of money, but because of our squad and the players we have, of it's one in, one out. So if you're moving Basuma on, then you need to make sure that you're getting someone in that position for that, and that's why I know, Ian, I'm going to upset you a little bit. I've heard a lot. I really want Eze as well. But I actually think he might be the player that we miss out on again this year. And the main reason why we miss out on him again this year is because of the clause he has, where it's a 65 million clause. We could easily afford that. The problem is Crystal Palace want that all in one lump sum. And Steve Parish is as much of a hard nose with transfers as Daniel Levy, and he ain't going to budge on that. So I actually think it would probably be easier to get Adam Wharton out of Crystal Palace than it would be to get Eze out of Crystal Palace.
I would go and release Xavi Simon's 60 million release clause from Leipzig. I would go and get him. He's younger than Eze. I mean, if you can't get Eze, I'd like Eze because he's Premier League proven. But I mean, I wanted him last season. But I'd think, okay, Semenyo, no, even if it ain't Eze, I want Simons.
But assuming we haven't got a £200 million budget, and I said to you, and you've all alluded to the same fact that the midfielders underperformed. Need to saying the same, sort the midfield out. My problem is I don't think the players are that bad. So going out and spending, unless you're going to you've got Basuma, you've got Bentancur, you've got Gray, you've got Bergvall, you've got Sarr, playing that pivot, that box to box. The kind I've said, they're all much the same. Unless you can't find 2 decent players from them, then you want to sell 3 of them. Why would we want Wharton? Why do we need Wharton when there's other areas of the team?
Because Ian, Wharton is a defensive midfielder. He is a ball-winning midfielder who can then get the play moving forward quickly, and we don't have that player. So that's why I would get rid of Basuma and get a player like a Wharton in who can win the ball back and get it moving forward very, very quickly. We don't have that player. That is the midfielder that we are missing, and I actually think that is more important for us than an Eze. I love Eze, and I would absolutely want Eze to come in. The problem is I don't think Eze would play left wing or left forward. So then he's trying to play attacking midfielder where you've already got Kulusevski. And I know obviously you said you would sell Kulusevski, but I probably wouldn't, just because of his ability to play out wide and in midfield. I think he gives you good versatility there, as in a right winger, which we don't really have apart from Johnson. I just think I think that defensive midfielder is more important than Eze.
Adrian?
I mean, look, we're going to have lots of options. I've just listed a few here. I mean, we've been listed with about 120 players since January, right? And I stopped putting them up. But these are the more recent ones we've been listed with. You know, Gibbs White, Aidan Hackney. Well, he's still at Middlesbrough, isn't he? Morton Hillman, yeah, again, is it Sporting? Larson, he scored that goal, didn't he, in the Euros? Won it from outside the box, I think. I like Fratesi. I really like David Fratesi. I think you could get him for 25, 30 mil. Edison, we all like him. Again, they're not strict what people call modern day numbers 6. I hate that numbers. I hate numbers anyway.
You know who's not there is the guy we've been heavily linked with is the guy from Roma.
Pisley.
Oh, I've got him further down because he's more
Have
of a
you
left
pronounced
fielder.
that properly?
He's playing in the
Tom,
under
if you
20.
can't pronounce his name, what chance has Ian got?
I know.
He's playing at the moment in the under 21 tournament in Slovakia. So I've got him further down here, right? But
he's more of a, he's not really a defensive again, but he's also very young, and he would be a player that you buy as potential, not as a player to improve us right now. He is 21, so he's of an age, but he's only had one season playing senior football. And what I noticed with here,
Go back to that previous one, Adrian.
I do not know him well at all. This is just what I've discovered from watching him since we got linked. He seems to just play the Hollywood ball quite a lot, just a lot of long ball over the top, which could work well for what Thomas Frank might want. But I'm not. Yeah, it's
and the Morton Holman and the Victor Froholt links. They're in because they're Danish, right? Okay, like they're just in there because they're Danish. But you know,
well, that Morton Holman.
Before
I'm going to move this on a bit.
Hang on, Ian. Before we go, I just think in a conversation about defensive and midfielders, we have to have a conversation, and maybe you've already had it tonight. But Tom, you were saying we haven't really got one. I think that's the role that Bentancur has been playing, albeit not terribly successfully. I think it's been a big disappointment. But I would seriously look at whether Bentancur's worth keeping.
I would keep Bentancur. I'd move on Basuma. I think Archie Gray will ultimately probably become our long-term defensive midfielder, and actually Thomas Frank wanted him at Brentford before we got him, so I do see that. But we've also got to remember he's also 19 years old, so he needs someone to learn from. Now, if your long-term future is Archie Gray, and therefore you want someone for him to kind of learn from, then actually Paulinho from Bayern Munich is probably your go-to as a 29-year-old, very experienced, good ball winner, but not very good. He's not a passer. He wins the ball, he gives it to someone else, let them do the hard work with regards to that. But that's what Wanyama was when we had Wanyama as well. So there is definitely players for that. The only reason why I say I sort of mentioned Wharton is because he is. I think he will become England's like main midfielder for many years. I think we missed out on not getting him when he was at Blackburn. But there's several players there that could do the job. The two that stick out for me as the most defensive midfielders is Paulinho and Hormund who is from Sporting. He's a Danish midfielder. He's like 6'3". He's a bit of a unit. But he's a very, very good defensive midfielder. But there's so many different ways that they could go. I think a lot's going to be who's going before we worry about who's coming in.
On that, Tom, I actually think we're going to keep Richarlison and obviously Solanke as the front. I think we're going to get two excellent signs 4 sort of midfield come strikers, either an Eze and a Buemo type, or a Simmons and a Buemo type, and we will get a midfielder, and that'll be done. And we might just take in Kyle Walker-Peters because he'll give us an extra European spot in the Champions League if he comes back. His contract's up in the summer. Walker-Peters is a no-brainer, easy deal to do. So that's what I think we'll do. I think we'll get 4, but I think 2. I actually think we'll get 2 what we consider to be marquee signings, and that midfielder you're talking about. We can do it because if you're playing 3 in midfield, all right, you need 6, but when you've got a squad of 23, you've got 2 11s and you've got the third goalkeeper, that leaves you 2 extra spots. I'd have them in midfield because that's where most games are won or lost, and the Premier League's a hard league to get through. You need the midfielders. So I'd have 8 midfielders. It wouldn't bother me. I'd have 8.
Don't think we need another striker?
I mean,
Lancashire in. It's time. I'd bring him in. We got Scarlett.
Do you know what I'm a bit annoyed about? I'm annoyed we didn't go for Delap because actually I think Solanke would be your main man, but Delap would have got plenty of game time, and then he would have been, by the time Solanke's coming to the end of his career, Delap is then into the thing. So I'm disappointed that we didn't go for Delap and we just let Chelsea kind of waltz in and get him. I definitely do think we need to get another striker, but
before we finish with midfielders, guys, just on excuse me, strong interest. This is from Spurs ITK Hub. Sometimes very good, sometimes misses the target, but strong interest in Frankfurt midfielder Hugo Larsson. It's from the tier 2 Mysterio. That's the latest on that.
Yeah. So Hugo Larsson is a more defensive midfielder, and he's got good passing range on him. So he definitely ticks that. He is also he's Swedish, so add another Swede to the ever-growing group that we've got there. And he's meant to be apparently quite good friends with Lucas.
How many Swedes do you want after midnight?
Oh, the whole team.
Yeah.
The whole team.
There was another one as well that I wanted to highlight on that.
But going back, personally, if we can get Mbeumo from Brentford, 100% we have to get that done. It's just whether or not he wants to go United. I would personally then go for Xavi Simons, because what Xavi Simons gives you is he gives you cover across both wings, because he can play on both wings and he can play midfield. Although I think he would be more expensive than Eze, you'll be able to amortise his fee over several years, which is going to make it.
I think he's got a 60 mil buyout clause.
Yeah, and it's not a straight like lump sum money like Eze is.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of the problem with Eze.
And he's 23 and he's a bowler.
Yeah, he's a very good player. And then I'd probably look at getting like Paulinho in if you can't afford Wharton. There is other players that you could get for that defensive midfield role, but
okay,
there's quite a plethora, to be fair.
I mean, I should have probably put one of the banners up before this. Manor Solomon is staying apparently. Thomas Frank wants to have a good look at him. What's your thoughts about that, Jem?
Well, he's been such a huge success at Leeds this year that I think it would be foolish not to at least give him an opportunity. So my gut feel says that maybe the Premiership is, it's just too much for him on a consistent basis. But, let's not forget he was in the Premiership before. My gut feel is that he won't last, but I think he's worth having a look at.
Adrian?
Yeah, I'd want to have a look at him. 10 goals, I think. 12 assists or whatever it is. 20 odd contributions to Leeds. Scored the winning goal in the last game to give him the title. He kept Mudryk out of the Shakhtar side. I mean, I don't know if it's through injury or what. I'm not fully up to speed with that. Just remember reading reports on it.
It's because Mudryk is shite. That's why.
That's a good point, though. That is, for 100 million, that's a good point, or whatever he costs, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, and look, we've only seen him 3 times in the Premier League. I mean, apart from Fulham, I didn't watch him at Fulham, right? but he had 2 cameos, 15-minute cameos on the right for us. I thought, like that. And then when I sat up, I like wingers that assist, that actually look up, not head down, arse up, and just hit the ball and hope that it reaches one of your players. But away at Burnley, that 5-2 a win, then 2 assists for Son's hat-trick. I was thought, this kid's got something about him, but it's too small a sample. Too small a sample. What I've seen. Have you guys seen him at Fulham? No.
No.
I mean, we bought him based off of his loan spell at Fulham, but I say bought him. We got him in on a free.
That's why we got him.
Yeah, we would not have gone for him if he wasn't on a free transfer. He was purely brought in to be able to make a bit of money on. And if he ended up being a success and being good, then it was kind of a win-win situation really with him. I think it's right. I think it's right for Thomas Frank to have a look at him, but there was nothing that I've seen with Manor Solomon that I think is amazing or very good. Like, okay, yeah, 10 goals, 12 assists in the Championship, playing in the best team that scored a shit ton of goals. Like, it's not that impressive, to be honest with you. It's good, and the Leeds fans are like, yeah, we'll take him back, but they're not like fighting up. They're not like, oh, we need to bring him back. We need to bring him back. They're like, oh yeah, if we can get him, we'll take him back. But they're not like dying for him.
If we've got Solomon, we've got Tell that we've just signed. We've still got Johnson. We've still got Kulusevski. We've got Odebear, and we're going to have to do something with Yang. That's, at the moment, 6 wingers. How many of these are realistic?
Mikey Moore.
You're forgetting Mikey Moore.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, I see Mikey Moore developing into a 10, but that's my...
Yeah, well, that's the way he plays for the England youth teams and stuff. To be honest, I can see Mikey Moore joining West Brom on loan this season with Ryan Mason, to be honest. Unless Thomas Frank really, 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 really likes him. I think it'll do him good to go on loan. But yeah, I think we have 10, maybe 11 wingers on the books at the moment. And yeah, I would still look to get more.
Interested about Mikey Moore. Imagine how he feels. He's got a Europa Cup winners medal at 17. Some players never get a medal in their whole career, right? And now that when he's 18 in August, he can actually change with the senior squad, right? Because of the Child Protection Act, he's not allowed to change in the same changing room until you're 18. I'm all for child protection, though. I really am. But I mean, yeah.
Before you move on, this comment from David, I can't say I agree with this, but Adrian, you comment on this. We're deluded about Gray struggling at right back, can't even get a DM role in the under-21s, and they're not great.
When has he played badly, David Clark? I've got to disagree with you. I watched him play for Leeds. He played 33 games or something for them at right back. He played a few as a number 10, and he played in central midfield. He played at right back out of necessity. He bossed the midfield in a cup game against Chelsea when he played. This kid's, I mean, because he doesn't look sexy, but this kid's got it all as far as I'm concerned. He reads the game well. He's got good vision. He's got a good pass on him. His timing for interceptions is good. He had a very good first half against Brighton at home when we got spanked. I thought he had a good half against Brighton. When has he let us down? He's played at left back, not let us down right down. He got bullied at Ipswich a bit by Delap, and then he switched positions. But so if you can do that left back, right back, and as a centre back, I would think it'd be. I mean, I know it's an important position, defensive midfielder. You've got to be very alert. Stop the opposing number 10 for playing for your lines and things like that. But no, I disagree. I think he's going to be a star.
I agree that I think he's going to be a really good player, but I think he has been exposed a bit on occasions. He's been a bit naive, and I think he's suffered from just the fact that we've asked so much of him to play in so many different roles and positions. It's very difficult for a player to really show his class when he hasn't got a defined role. And I don't think he's ready to take on every role yet. So I think we've got to figure out where he's going to be best and keep him there rather than trying to use him as a utility player to fill in wherever somebody's needed.
But the truth is, he's played so many games for us, which has been a positive out of our disastrous season because Bentancur and him have played loads of games. And he's shown that he stood up for it, that he can cope with it. At his age, he can cope with Premier League football because he hasn't let us down. And for a kid his age, and the same for Bentancur, that's got to be a positive. That has to be a positive.
So for me, I don't think there's many 18-year-olds in the history of the Premier League that have played as many games out of position and not like he played centre back for a huge period of time, and not only did he play centre back, he played centre back where his partner centre back was Ben Davies, who is not a true centre back as well. And like, don't get me, we went through a terrible run of not winning games and stuff like that whilst they were there, but I think he stood up to the challenge as an 18-year-old incredibly well. And the one thing I will say is they're one of the Premier League's best ever midfielders. His first few seasons, while he was a young player, he played right back and eventually became one of the best centre midfielders in the whole of the Premier League. And that person was Steven Gerrard. And I think the fact that Archie Gray has played right back, centre back, left back, midfield, all of this is so good for him, especially if he's going to be a defensive midfielder, because he is learning, okay, what protection, when I played centre back, what protection did I want from my midfield? And then he knows he can adjust to that. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't even be surprised if he actually did just become a centre back at some point, especially if we're playing three at the back and him being that centre back that steps into midfield as passer and stuff as well. I see a lot of versatility with him, but I think he's got a really, really high ceiling. And I think writing off an 18-year-old after one season who's played as many games as he has, not looked out of place, and you know, I just think that's just outrageous.
I like it when he's been on the right and he's at least he's bold where other players want to play it safe, when he wants to chip them long balls forward down the right hand side and that. Like, I like his range of passing. And he'll get better. He will get better. But I mean,
I'm with Tom, Adrian. I think he could develop into a very good centre half in the way that Gary Mabbott did. And Tom, you'll be too young to remember him playing.
I remember Gary. I'll speak to Gary a bit because he. So interesting story. Just go off topic. The family that own the zoo that I work at now, they used to own Samson's coaches, who used to do the coach journeys for Tottenham Hotspur into Europe through the 80s and stuff like that. So and obviously with Gary Mabbott and his diabetes, Lynn, who is my CEO and stuff, she actually used to look after Gary Mabbott on those journeys, and actually Gary pops up to the zoo.
Pops
up to the zoo quite a lot.
Very, very good centre half. After being a very good midfield player. If anything, he was a better centre half than a midfield player. Right, okay, look, we need to, it's 1 hour 47 and it's nearly midnight here as well. And a lot of this is going to come, I think a lot of this is going to be clearer probably by the time we do a show next Sunday. But let's go back to these wingers because, as I say, we've already got like 6 on our books. And it seems to me if we've got 6, we're not getting too many of these. We're going to find out. Eze, I think, is probably right that with Palace's buyout, Parish isn't buying. We haven't got 80 million on PSR or in cash to play 80 million or 65 million up front. And Wemo he'll be back from whenever he's back. He's either going to United or he's going to Tottenham, I think, and we'll find that out quickly. Semenyo, I don't know about the rest. I mean, although
I posted 2 videos of Semenyo and then Buemo, and to me, because I've only seen Buemo basically when Brentford have played us, I've not followed him. And Buemo looks much the better player, and he can play as a 9 as well, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And actually, I think he's that much better that I'm really not interested in Semenyo. I know fans like him. I'm really not interested in Semenyo. I just don't think he's all that he's cracked up to be. But in Buemo, yeah, with Eze. I mean, if we could get Concalves as well, that would be something, right? And I think if you're talking 70 million for Semenyo, you can go and get Concalves for that. You know, so I'd be going for him. But then it's you know.
I don't
But
know
I
if
don't-
you're Gary Lineker and say I'll do the show in my underwear or something. But if we got Eze and Mbeumo, I would be a very happy man. I also think there's not much
Just to
chance.
confirm, Ian, we don't want to see you in your pants.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
okay.
Garnacho's a really interesting one because
Yeah,
he strikes me as being a very talented player who's just not in the right mindset. But if you could get him going, I think he could be incredibly effective.
Yeah.
I think.
Any others here, Tom?
I mean, for me, well, so there's quite a few different type of wingers. Bakayoko, if we were still with Ange, I would say he would be your man because he is a one-on-one take-on specialist. That's what he like thrives at. Goncalves is much more of a ball-playing winger. In fact, to the point where he actually probably could play as a central attacking midfielder more than a winger. Semenyo is a player that can go both ways. And a random interesting fact about Semenyo is he, out of all of the players in the Premier League, was the most like ambipedal player. He had the most shots with his left foot and right foot, like percentage wise. I think he was almost 50-50 with what foot he shot with. So he has unpredictability about him when it comes to that regards. And he is a player who will pick up the ball and he'll drive and he'll run with it. He's not really a player who will run like behind the defense to receive the ball. He's more get it into feet and drive with it, whereas Mbeumo is much more running in behind and stuff. But him and Mbeumo are very, very different, yet very similar, if that makes sense. Mbeumo's much more of a finisher who is also good at taking on, but also the one thing that people don't sort of think of with Mbeumo, purely because he scored 20 goals last season, is that he also got a lot of assists as well. He actually sets up quite a lot. So and Mbeumo's the one, like of all the players there, he's the one that we should be gunning for. But
I mean, three of those are Man United players, isn't it? Rashford, Garnacho, and Sancho. There's rumours about Garnacho. He is Argentinian, and there is like a bit of friction with the manager. You should play me more, sort of thing like that, and all that. But I don't know how true that is. Pedro.
Garnacho he's a maverick. He is on his day. He can be absolutely elite, but he has got a big seemingly attitude problem. And I got mates who are United fans and stuff. Obviously coming from London, lots of United fans. And they just say, well, there was all the problem with like the team sheets were being leaked to the media before the weekend and stuff, and that got all stemmed back to Garnacho and stuff like that. So for me, as talented as he could be, he's just a big red flag, and I would just stay as far away as you possibly can.
One thing, the only time I felt United might breach us in Bilbao was when Garnacho came on. That was the only time. In fact, I think it was either Adrian or Jem that asked me that. Were you worried? I think it was you actually, Adrian. Were you worried when Garnacho came on?
I was.
I was because I thought he should have been on a lot earlier.
Yeah,
actually, I was really relieved not to see him on the team sheet from the start.
Yeah, Garnacho should have started for them. If he had started for him, it could have been a very, very different game.
Yeah, he's one of those players. I mean, he plays more left than right, doesn't he, Garnacho? The Garnacho left, Mbeumo right. There's a bit of shithousery there, but a bit of strength. And anyway, okay. I'm gonna leave it with this, and then we're just gonna talk about, because a lot of this will become clearer. Are we all agreed we need someone proper to back up Solanke, especially if Richarlison is leaving? So I'm not having you back on. You're fired. You are the.
We do, but there's a dearth of strikers out there, isn't there? Unless people are going to come up with names I haven't heard of.
I don't think we're going to get any of those. I really don't think we're going to get any of those, but I think we definitely need a striker. You know, you can easily see a scenario where we're stuck with an injured Solanke for the best part of the season, and you're really struggling to see who's going to get a lot of goals after that.
I mean, the one thing I would say is, last season was one of the first times Solanke's actually missed a run of games through injury. He's actually been pretty good for his career of not suffering from injury and stuff. And so you do have that. I think if you sign Mbeumo, we know that Mbeumo can play through the middle. I also think Kulusevski can play as like a number 9, especially if he had wingers running off of him as well. He could definitely play as that more sort of false 9 kind of position. So I think you've got options there. I would still be looking to get a striker in, but I definitely think it's quite low down on the list of what we should be looking for.
Why would Kluivert be unobtainable?
Kluivert, what, from Bournemouth?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, his dad's too old now.
I'll give you one reason why, and that's the fact that he's not a striker. He's an attacking midfielder. So yeah, that would be your main reason why you wouldn't go for Kluivert.
Yeah,
it's strange that not many clubs have snapped up Gyökeres yet, though. I mean, what is it about him that they don't?
They want
fancy?
80 million. They want 80 million for him. That's
They're not
fine.
getting that.
Well,
That's
there's a long list. So there was a gentleman's agreement with Gyökeres with Sporting that if a Champions League team came in for him, that he could be sold for 65 million euros plus 10 million euros add-on, basically.
Okay.
But Sporting
Swedish.
Well,
yeah, Swedish mafia.
When we started, it might have even been before we came on air. There was a report I read earlier that Arsenal are not willing to pay that kind of money for Gyökeres, and are willing to or looking to go for Ollie Watkins from Aston Villa instead.
I hope they do that.
You don't rate. That's interesting. You don't rate him, Tom.
What, Ollie Watkins?
Yeah.
No. I think if Aston Villa get a good offer I thought Aston Villa should have sold him for 60 million. I like Ollie Watkins, but he's also one of the biggest waster of opportunities.
Yeah, he misses a lot of chances. Not as bad as Werner, but I mean.
One thing I would say about Ollie Watkins is I think he's going to make a very good manager one day. I think he talks very articulately and sensibly about the game. I think he understands it, but I don't think he's a great finisher. Like you, Tom, I'd love him to go to Arsenal because I don't think he'd be.
The other thing with Ollie Watkins as well is he's 29 years old. Like, he's not young. And he's a player that's relied on pace as well. And we've seen with Son, as soon as players hit their 30s, like, speed starts to leave you a bit.
Yeah, that's what happened to Ian.
Yeah. We have got more people on now. This happens, Jim, I don't know how well you're aware, but going out this time, we tend to pick up, you saw that Kiwi Spurs, so I presume that's genuinely someone from New Zealand. But we have got people coming in all of the time.
Big up, Jacob.
And Jose, one of our regulars. I think we're going against you for one of the up and coming up best new show, Jose. Well, this is the interesting thing, Jose. Watch out of Villa unload a load of players to Saudi again to avoid. Well, they'll certainly have to unload them somewhere. And was it Adrian who put Vlahovic on that list? Well,
of course it was Daniel. You know that.
I think that I couldn't possibly comment.
I did, Daniel. Just for you, Daniel. I know he reckons I've got a picture of Vlahovic on my bedside table because I like the player, right? So
yeah. Jacob, where are you if it's 110 degrees? Presumably somewhere in the Middle East.
Yeah.
There's not many places to get to 110 degrees at this time. So yeah, look, I think, Adrian, this is going to go through the summer, these names and who we're going, who's going. We've pretty blasted through it. Do you want to go through the subs bit, Adrian, before I'm going to ask Jem about where we started with Tom and Dave a couple of hours ago, and then let people get off. Oh, hang on. We'll go on then. Yeah. Nathan Collins, Christian Norgard, Johan Wieser. Who wants to lead on that?
Any of those players?
Yeah.
The only one Visser. I mean, if we could get him for cheap enough, then I would, but I wouldn't be crying out to go and get Visser, to be honest with you. Nathan Collins could be a good option if Romero leaves, in terms of he's a very good ball playing centre back. Christian Norgard, no, he's like almost 31 years old.
Not good enough, in my view. Just simply not good
It's
enough.
just that there were tenuous links, you know. So
I like Damsgaard, but is he one of those players that looks better than he is?
He's been playing as a 10, hasn't he?
He's only young, even though his hairline would suggest that he's more like in his 40s. But he has improved immensely this year, as playing a little bit more deeper than what he used to sort of play as a winger / attacking midfielder.
Shades of Ericsson.
Yeah,
Ericsson.
Yeah,
Probably
just a player I like, but sometimes, and I'm guilty of this as a Spurs supporter, we all like these, players that look good on the ball and what have you. And sometimes they're not always as effective when you analyse their play deeply. We've all seen players like that play for Spurs. Okay, Adrian, do you want to go through the sub stuff and what have you, and the nominations? And I'm going to ask Jem about Ange and Thomas Frank, and then I think we'll knock it off for the night. Otherwise, we're going till 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah, we got 110 of you viewing this, which is fantastic. Our shows do go out Tuesdays usually during the season, but not at the moment unless there's something really interesting to talk about at 9:00. Ian hosts, and I usually host the Tuesday show. Ian hosts the Sunday show at 9:00 as well, and Drew hosts the Friday show at 10:00 UK time to suit the Canadian, American, and Southern Hemisphere audience. And one day we will get Tom to host a show, right? So,
yeah.
So you can find us on Facebook as well. We've just gone over the 14,500 members on Facebook. We've got 3,200 members that follow me on XCOM, and we've got a page of 300 members because the videos go out there and they go out on Twitter as well, or XCOM as well. And we've got a WhatsApp group as well. If anyone's interested in coming on shows, all you got to do is give your phone number to either me, Ian, Drew, or Tom, and we'll add you to the group. And that, because we use the WhatsApp group as a sync to get guests, and you're more than welcome. Obviously, we thank you all for your questions and for all your comments in the chat.
Oh, absolutely.
And a big up to everyone who follows us, who watches us on playback as well. And with that, all I can do is thank you all again. And we've got this, and Spurs Kings, and a big shout out to Spurs Kings, because with Marlon and Ash Mag, I'm sure many of you know them. And if you don't get to know them, they run a good podcast, really, really good content. And they've put up a competition for all podcasters out there. In all, there's so many different groups. We're in the best newcomer and best upcoming podcast, but there's many groups. So please go and vote for us and vote for the others. I'm sure you'll know many of the people that do these other podcasts as well, and they do them for nothing. So just take the time and go and give them your vote, and we see how it goes out. It's a bit of fun, so we'll see what happens. Yeah, and with that, thank you all again, and back to you.
I'm starting to wonder again. You could do the Friday show at 10:00. I'm starting to wonder, with the numbers we get later on in the show, we should go out at 10:00 UK time. But we will discuss that, Adrian. Jem,
or 9:30 even 9:30. You know what I mean? So
that might work. Jem,
better for you, because when you're in Spain, you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, it just means it's a very late night. But worry, that's my problem to worry
Sitting
about.
in deck chairs, having a cheese and wine party, getting burnt. You know what I mean? Drinking sickly cocktails. You know.
It's gone midnight here. Jem, we had a conversation, I reckon, in around January, where I said, if you want rid of Ange, because things were obviously not going brilliantly, who do you want in? And your words, Thomas Frank. And I said, why would he come? And you went like that, money. I think it's a bit more than about money. But your take on Ange's dismissal and your view on whether Thomas Frank's the right man?
I think emotionally, I felt that Ange had done enough to warrant another 10 games. But I always felt that after 10 games, he'd be gone next season. So I understand why Levy took that decision. I think Thomas Frank is a great thinker. I think he's very articulate. I think he's somebody any club would be proud to have as a manager. And I think his attacking, counter-attacking style of play is really interesting. Listen, it's always going to be a risk. You bring in somebody who's never won anything. It's always going to be a risk. So we all want him to succeed, but I get the impression that most Spurs fans think it's a good appointment and potentially a longer term appointment. So my fingers are crossed. I have high hopes for him, but we know he's got a task on his hands.
We'll know a lot in a few weeks as well, I think, about the kind of player he's going to bring in and take out, and how much Levy's prepared to back him as well, which, I mean, I don't think...
Jem, what do you think are reasonable expectations? Because let's be realistic, right? The squad is at present, right? We're not winning the Premier League, and we're definitely not winning the Champions League, right?
Yeah.
So that only leaves 2 domestic cups, and get it in the chat, guys. What? To be fair to the new manager as well, you got to be fair to him. I mean, what is an acceptable position to finish? And what about the domestic cups? Do you think we should really, go strong?
I think that realistically, we want to be ideally clearly top 4 or 5, but top 7 has to be almost a given in the first season, and you would hope to push on from there. You would hope that we could make a serious attempt at one of the domestic cups. I suppose getting out the group stages in the Champions League would be a real bonus, but I wouldn't expect us with the current squad to go any further than that. But of course, that can change if we bring in a couple of marquee signings.
Tom?
Okay. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Thomas.
Expectations from Ange this season, Tom? League
What's
position, domestic. Well, we're not going to win the league, are we? And we're not going to win the Champions League, right? So
we're winning it always.
Well, the quadruple's on. This actually quintuple's on, isn't it?
It's on until it's off. It's on until it's off
as well. So we could win all 5, right? But I mean, realistically, we're not winning the league. We're not winning the Champions League. We could get through.
Hell of a lot of pressure off if we, by some miracle, win that Super Cup against a knackered Paris Saint-Germain.
Yeah, they have to be.
Have I pronounced that okay for you, Tom? By the way.
Yes.
Paris Saint-Germain.
If you could pronounce Paris Saint-Germain's left winger for me, that would be
Paris Saint-Germain.
Kvaratskhelia.
What?
Kvaratskhelia, his name is.
Kvaratskhelia, yeah.
Have you taken penicillin for that? Yeah. Okay.
So, what are your expectations, Tom?
My pronunciations.
My expectations.
When Richarlison sold, it won't matter too much. Yeah. And we don't get Eze, it won't matter at all.
No. My expectations. Look, we're not going to win the Champions League. We're probably not going to win the Premier League, so it'd be nice for us to have a good go at one of the domestic cups. But where I have a slight issue is that what our expectation of what we're expecting for Frank would be no different to what we would be expecting from Ange if Ange was still manager. We wouldn't be expecting Ange for the title challenge. We wouldn't be expecting Ange for the Champions League. We're expecting a good go at the cups, and I don't know. But the reason why I think Thomas Frank is the right appointment and the right decision is because he is for the long term. Like Jem, you said it yourself that with with Ange, he probably only would have had 10 games. Well, if he's only going to have 10 games, then why give him 10 games at all?
Yeah,
I
know what you're saying. The bit, and I really want to draw a line under this because I said I had Dave on, and I wanted his take because Dave coaches and what have you. Is that, and this is what we talked about it with leadership on the field, is that however you dress it up with Ange, that man has been a serial winner all his coaching career. I hear about it was only in Japan, it was only in Australia, it was only in Scotland. It was only the Europa League against poor opposition and the worst Man United side there's ever been. Well, I saw them relegated, but you start to say, hang on a minute. Even people have coached in poor leagues have not done as well as he does. There just comes a point where there's a part of me that's always going to be worried that we let a good one slip away. But anyway.
I think with Ange, it's the what if that hurts, right? It's what if it did go well? What if he did get the players that we needed and it did go well? And we're never going to know that, but maybe that's better for his legacy, that actually he just goes out on this high, and we can remember him fondly for what he achieved.
And all of those of you that were at the stadium at the parade in Bilbao, it's all of us on here. Anyway.
My expectations for this season, really, as the season to get older. I mean, I know the club would want Champions League. I only want Champions League if we've got a good chance of going a long way in the competition. I would take 6th and 7th because if we got Europa League again, we can win that competition, right? We should always be able to win that competition the way it is now.
Well, that's what we should do, then, Adrian. We should win the
Europa
Europa League
Cup. So I would if we got 6th and 7th and got a cup, that would do me.
Yeah.
Go on, carry on, Tom.
No, I was going to say that, but that's maybe what we should do. We should win the Europa League, play in the Champions League, qualify for the Europa League, win the Europa League, play in the just win the Europa League every other year.
Yeah.
And gradually upgrade the squad while we're doing it, so we can then really compete in the Champions League.
Yeah,
because we'd have to shit a miracle to win it, wouldn't we?
Auckland's in New Zealand, Daniel. I mean,
minimum for me next year, we have to qualify for Europa League by whatever means that is, be that winning a domestic trophy or well, we need to, for me, top 8 minimum, absolute minimum for finish. That being said, if we don't finish top 8, but we have good runs and win a trophy and the other things, then I would stick with Frank at the end of that anyway. It's difficult because I think the pressure is on because he has to perform on all fronts. He has to perform on all fronts because that's what the Spurs management, that's what the board has said that they want the manager to do, is to be able to compete on all fronts. So he needs to be able to compete on all fronts. But it's
I mean, Ange started 10 games, got 26 points. We were, and then we were in a position of 5th, but then we got 40 points to finish with 66, and we stayed 5th throughout the whole of the season with all the troubles we had last year. We stayed 5th.
Don't expect us to go unbeaten in the first 10 games under Frank.
That would be expecting a lot, wouldn't it? It'd be nice. Wouldn't it?
Okay. Right, I definitely think I want to start the show later because we've got more and more people coming on. You can't run for 4 hours. I'll fall asleep. It's gone midnight here. So
you're cool, Ian. You're cool.
I've got to go. I have got a dash. So I'll see you guys later. I'll see you.
Tom, you
forward to hosting this show as well.
Okay.
Yes, I will do.
I'm going to leave you with a song what I wrote. I wrote this song what I wrote. I think was it Ernie Wise? I play what I wrote or something like that. Anyway. We'll leave you with this, and we'll see you on Tuesday night at what time, Adrian?
Well, if there's a show Tuesday, it'll be 9 o'clock.
And if or 10 o'clock next Friday.
It'll be 10 o'clock on Friday because Wednesday you've got the fixture list coming out for next season. So Drew will be discussing that Friday amongst whatever he wants to discuss. So
okay. Thanks everybody in the chat. Thanks Tom. Thanks Jim. Thanks Adrian. See you backstage.
We are Tottenham diehards, something I can't explain. We follow through sun and rain. When we lose, we don't complain. Yes we do, oh we do. But Tottenham